Welcome back to the next video in our 3D Racer tutorial series. Today we're going to work on cleaning up some small issues that I've noticed in the game, putting in some music, and then also adding in a player save state. So we're doing something called player preferences. So I want to go ahead and jump in and take care of all that. Before we do, let's talk about cleaning up the game a little bit. A simple thing that we want to clean up is here our tracker inside of our hierarchy. If you look at it, we were using this red box here as a way to denote where our car is going. I'm going to leave it on, but don't forget that if it's starting to not work for you, like you feel like the track is working for you, eventually we'll want to turn off that mesh renderer. And the same thing for the actual waypoints themselves, turning off their renderers so that we don't see them anymore in game. I'm leaving mine on just for the sake of keeping up with where we're going to be if I have any more issues along the way. Another thing I had to do, and I was noting, let me see if I can go to waypoint number 3, was I was having trouble with some of these corners here. So like I put a wall in over here, but it still wasn't quite getting it. So I had to go back through. Originally I had only 16 points, and I've gone back in and added 4 more points all throughout here. Like this corner here was a little tricky for me towards the end. I just adding more points and then making sure that when I do that on my tracker script, that I am adding in new variables at the top to hold that information, and then coming through and adding in the appropriate if statements to track that along the way. So if you're finding that your enemy car AI is just kind of wonky, it's not making it around the track, add in a few more points along the way and go adjust appropriately to fix that. And it took me a good little while to kind of get this exactly where I wanted it to be. The last thing that I really want to fix, and I want you to follow along with me on this part, is my game crashed. At the end of the last video, you probably noticed it crashed. And as I kept working on it, and the other copy of the game that I'm working on, it kept crashing. And the thing that I think is going to fix it, and it hasn't crashed for me since I've done it, so I'm hoping that's going to continue to be the case, is the way we were turning off the player controls and the enemy controls. So let's go change that up now. So on countdown script, on line 5, we were using Unity standard assets.vehicles.car to turn off the control specifically. Well, I went back and I added in public game object car controls, public game object enemy controls. That's what we're using currently. I'm going to actually reference the scripts themselves. So public, and the first one was called car controller, and I'm going to call it player car controller script here. And then I want to copy that and place it on the next line and call it enemy 01 car controller script. Save that. Then down here, I want to change this right here. So player. So the way this line is going to be now, it's going to delete lines 50 and 51, which means we can now delete lines 13 and 14. For me, it's just the game object. So before I go any further, let me save this. So we're going to be looking at the car controller script, and we're going to be changing. Basically, my workaround is this. On the car controller script, you have a top speed. And I'm going to open that script here. Line 35 is a public float called top speed, and right now it's set to 200 on this. I just want to turn, I'm sorry, it's a private float, I believe. I'm going to get rid of that serialized field, make sure it says public float, and I'm going to set that actually to 150. think that's originally how it was. I played with it a little bit. So line 35, make that a public float and save that. Give it a chance to compile. On your player car, I'm going to turn that car controller script back on, and I'm going to publicly set it to 0 here. Then on your enemy car, turn on the car AI control script, just turn that back on, and also set the top speed here to 0. So when the game starts, it will be set to 0. So the game, they won't have any forward functionality. They have no top speed. But then we will add in via script, going back to your countdown script. Whenever it actually starts, so 3, 2, 1, go. Line 48, it will be player car controller script dot, and then the name of the variable, which is m_top speed, and we're just going to set it to 150, and then the same thing for the enemy car. And for some reason, originally when I first came in, it was different. I mean, I think it's like 140 originally set on the enemy car. So I'm going to stay consistent with what it was prescribed when we added the assets. But those are the two numbers, 150 and 140. I'm going to save that. So that should be good. And now we just need to assign those references here on the countdown script, which was on our start manager, I believe. Yeah. So we just need to drag on the player car and the enemy car. And that should take care of all those null reference exception stuff that we were getting early on. So let me save that, make sure that is working on this one. Okay, now I am getting a null reference exception here, and it's for the progress week tracker, which I noticed was coming up on my other project too, but I wasn't able to really figure it out because it was the line 96. So target dot position equals circuit. So like there's a circuit functionality here on the enemy car. So was it under Sky Car? No. It's under colliders, I believe, or helpers, sorry. Was it actually on the enemy car itself? So Waypoint progress tracker, right here. It's this right here. It's looking for a circuit, but I'm not really sure if that is, so like this is the way it originally was scripted to pull in an entire object that contains all those points, and we're just not using that. But that shouldn't cause any crashing. I haven't had any issues with it. So it's the only null reference I've been having show up since then. Well, this has just seemed to work a lot better since then. Okay, really quick, let's go ahead and do music. You guys are familiar with music, but I want to make sure we cover that. In our project area, we have audio folder, and it currently says FX. I'm going to go ahead and edit another folder for music. I think we applied our music originally under our camera follow object, main camera, right here. So instead, I'm going to add as a child of car, control right click, create an empty, and I will just call this our audio files game object. Audio files, press return, and then as a child of this, I'm going to add a FX and a music one, just like our folders at the bottom have. Command D, and I'll make this one music. And I'll go ahead and move these audio objects down here to FX, like this. So it might be a little bit easier to find. And I'm keeping it on my car just because our camera is our listener, and it'll always be right behind our car. So that seems, because we have 3D sound enabled, so we're just going to do that. So I'm going to go to play on loop, which we used last year a lot. I was going to think about, adding on a loop. There it is. I was thinking about giving you a video to listen to, but I mean, some music to put in your song, but I decided against it. Wait, action. I listened to a bunch of these recently, and oh, you know what? There's a word. Maybe just the word driving, even though it's not the same thing, but. I can hear that getting frustrating pretty quickly. No. Yeah, you know, just for the sake of finishing this out, I'm going to download that. Download. It gives me a zip file. I'm going to double click that to open it up, and I should now get the wave form. And I'm going to drag that into my music folder here. And if you just drag this straight onto the music object here, it should automatically add on the audio source here. And actually, I'm going to get rid of play on awake and loop, and then we're going to have this music start whenever we reach 0 in our countdown. So I want to go back to scripts. This is a personal preference thing. I just, a lot of the games I grew up playing with the driving games, they have the music would not really start until the game would, set. So at the very top, line 14, I'm going to press public, or type in. I don't know what, my terminology is way off today. Audio source level music. And whenever you reach the end of the countdown, down here, so the play sound, I'm just going to add it after that. I will say level music dot play, and that should take care of that. I just need to go assign that onto my countdown script, which is on my start manager right here. You need to know what audio source, so I'm going to go grab here music. Yeah. Maybe I should add a, I should have added, I lied to you. Let me go ahead and add this as another child. I forgot to do that. I'll just call this level music and then have the music on there. That makes way more sense. So I'm going to remove this component. Actually, can I copy that component? No, let's just remove it. It's easier just to do that. Remove, go find my music. Drag it onto level music. I want to hold it on a separate object. That makes more sense. Turn off play on awake, turn on loop, and then start manager, drag in level music here, and that should start whenever the game reaches 0. There you go. Sounds pretty good. So the last part, and sort of the meatier part of what we're doing today, is doing a player preferences, looking at player preferences. So we want to basically have it so that whenever you stop playing the game and then you reload the game, that you still have your best lap times saved. And so player preferences basically creates a file that exists outside of this. It exists inside the computer itself. So even if I turn the computer off, it's a written file that holds this information. The problem, I guess not the problem, is just know that player preferences only holds floats, ints, and strings. So it can only hold names, whole numbers, and decimal numbers. So we have to kind of, we can either restructure our information to hold that. So player health values, names of items, all that works really, really easily. So let's go ahead and just try to do this. So our goal is going to be whenever we get a best time, initially just save that number. And then we're going to go back and say, okay, now whenever you get a better time, keep updating that. Let's do one thing at a time. So let's go to scripts. And the script that holds the information about best times or does the updating for that was our lap complete script. So I'm going to open that up. So right here is where this is whenever we enter this, this is what actually puts the numbers on the screen. So this is our display. And then this is what resets it. So before we reset, let's go ahead and make sure that we save this to a player preferences. So I'm going to create a little space here. For me now, line 41. So after this best melee display, blah, 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 blah. I want to say player preferences dot set. So set is saving the value, and we're going to do the inverse in a little bit. And we need to create a name for that value. So a string for this one, minute. I'll call it minute save. So this is the, and then comma, it needs to know what is it we're saving. And that value is coming from our lap time manager dot minute count. So the minutes that we have when we hit the line there. So lap time manager dot minute count. And then semicolon. So this will save this onto a separate file. That complete time, the best complete time. PlayerPrefs dot set int. So we're doing the same thing, but we're doing it for our second save. So saving our seconds, comma, and once again, getting this from our lap time manager dot second count. And then I made a mistake earlier while doing this, so I want to be careful with this. So this is PlayerPrefs dot, and this is now a float, so set float. And then the name, I'll just call it millisave, comma, this once again is coming from our lap time manager dot milli count. And I accidentally put milli display. It was creating some issues for me. So I will save that really quick. So now we need to make a new script. So this right here is saving the values whenever we hit this. But we obviously want to load these whenever the game starts as well. Wonder if we should go test this. No, we won't be able to actually see this value. Let's wait until we make the other script, then we can see it. So I'm going to go back into Unity. So I save that script and let it compile. And we're going to make a new script, which is the one that's going to load the lap times whenever we start the game. So go over here and create a new C# script. And I'm going to call it load lap times. Man, a lot of our scripts start with the letter L. Open this new script up. So this is going to load our lap times, but also display them for us. I'm going to go ahead and add, since we're doing displays, using Text Mesh Pro, and I'll do the displaying of text, you know, the way that we did more of last year. So what variables do I need? Well, I need to know an integer called minute count. I'll just do a little more hyphen abbreviation of this. Sec count. Oops. And then public float milli count. Okay, and now we also want to get our Text Mesh Pro objects, like how we're going to display this. So public Text Mesh Pro UGUI, and it'll be our minute display, public Text Mesh Pro UGUI second display. Actually, I'm going to call it best min display, because that's the actual one that we have in there. Display. Okay. And then finally, public Text Mesh Pro UGUI best milli display. There you go. I don't need that capital I there. Looks fine. I'm going to save what we have here. I don't think I'm using the update on this, so I'm going to delete the void update boilerplate. So essentially, we're going to do the opposite of our set, and we're going to get in our start. So when the game starts, we're going to say player, if I can spell it correctly, PlayerPrefs. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I did it inversely. I need to say min count is equal to PlayerPrefs dot get, and that's an int. And we have to use the exact name that we came up with on our other script, which was open. I gotta get used to this keyboard. Just not getting it. Minute save. Same thing with our sec count, is getting that from that PlayerPrefs file. We're going to get the integer known as second. This second save. And I spelled that all the way out. I'm going to save really quick, make sure I'm getting exactly the same one. That was on our lap complete script. Yep, second save. So this is where I'm creating the name. So I have to use the same name over here. And then milli save, capital M milli save. So milli count equals player prefs dot get float, obviously. And that was milli count. And then semicolon at the end of that. Oh, milli save, see? That's the kind of stuff I'm overlooking. All right. So we now have these numbers. We've gotten them. We just need to display them. So I'm going to go down a couple lines. So we'll say best min display dot text equals, and then since we know it needs to be a string, we're just going to add those quotation marks. That's one way to kind of count that, and that's going to be our minute count. And then best sec display dot text, so the text on that text message pro object plus second count. And then finally best milli display dot text equals. So I had to I had some like weird issues with it doing it the same way. When I went quotation plus milli count, I had some problems with the way that it was setting out the values on the screen. Like it was just kind of wonky. So I went ahead and added a .to string, which we did before, and then inside here, so this f of 0 is just how many decimal points that we need out from the float. So float decimal points, and I want no decimal points on our milli count. I just want the millisecond count exactly. So that's what the f of 0 is, and that worked for me. So I'm going to save that and head back into Unity. All right, I'm going to close this car up in the hierarchy. So I'm having a lot of managers here, and I'm going to have to create a new one. So let me do one thing. Let me create an empty and just call it managers. And actually, before I do that, I'm also just going to add some dots here, like some little, like that. And I'm going to start dragging my managers just underneath it, not as a child of it, but I want to do just kind of keep everything separated this way. There's a lot of different ways to stay organized. This is just one way to do so. All right, so now I'm going to create a new empty called load lap time manager, and I'm going to add that script onto it. So the min, sec, second count, all that stuff's fine. So I just need to go back into my canvas and timer panel, and I have my min display, the best ones. So that's why I'm going to drag those in here. And that looks pretty good. So save that. So the first time we do this, we'll need to just run a full lap and then stop playing and then try it again. It should reset that lap time that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and just run the lap once, and then I'll see you when I get finished. All right, that was super terrible. But before I even continue, I just noticed that my lap time manager here was not on. I'm going to turn that on. I don't know why that wasn't on. Let me press play again. There we go. Okay, I'll try this again. Okay. So it's saved. It should, right now the best time should be this. But if so, it was like 1 minute and 117. Right now it says 0. Let me save, and it should update that. There you go. It saved the value, even though we're in a totally different game. Perfect. Now I don't like the way that it's set up here, so I might need to go back into our. Let's go back into our load lap time script. This is displaying, and I want to have the same sort of setup that I have before with adding after my min count the colon. After my second count, I want to add the period, and then I think that was it. Let's see if the setup on that looks a little bit better. So save, going back into Unity, and then pressing play. And then, yeah, it looks a little bit better. That looks a little bit cleaner. Perfect. Yeah, so the last thing is we want to do for this video is to get the well, right now, okay, what's going to happen now is if I have a slower time than 1 minute 17, it's still going to save that value. It just happens whenever I cross the line, it's going to say whatever that number is in player preferences, not the actual best time. So let's add that little bit of functionality. So I'm going to go to the lap time manager script here, and I'm going to make a variable to keep up with our time delta time. So this is actually going to check to make sure what is the real time, and then are we less than that value. So line 15 for me. I'll make it a public static. I don't really need it to change. I just need it to be seen. And I'm going to call it raw time. This is actually the raw time of the game that's occurring. And then the update below my millicount right now. So millicount is equal to time.delta time times 10. And I just want the root time. So I'm just going to make raw time plus equals just time.delta time, not multiplied by 10. So raw time basically is milli time divided by 10. But this is perfectly fine for what we're doing. So save. Now let's go to our, we're just going to hold this information here. Then in our lap complete script, where is that at? Right here. I need to make one up here, a variable as well. But I'm going to call it public. And this is also a static. No, I'm not making it static. It's just a float. And we're going to call it saved raw time. So this will be the value that's saved, the actual time that's being saved between each one. And on the untrigger enter, whenever it does occur, we're going to say saved raw time equals our player preferences dot get float. We haven't actually set the float yet. We're going to do that in a second. But this is whenever we hit it, we're going to go find the float. We're going to go get something called raw time. That's the name we're going to have to use here. So save that. So we now need an if statement to ensure that the time that we just set, or we're going to get, is actually better or not. So if the lap time is less than, then we're going to do the setting functions. So it's down here. Like we're just going to put it on the next line. We're basically going to put all of this is going to happen if the time is actually less. So if lap time manager dot raw time, if its raw time is less than or equal to the saved raw time, open curly brackets on the next line, and then it's close at the end for me, line 44. So now we actually save the time if it is less. This will only update the best time if our time is actually less than. That's doing all the work for us. And then one last step. Whenever we actually complete the lap, we need to reset our raw time value. So we haven't actually saved it, and we need to reset it. So above, right here, like right here in line 49, I'm going to press return. This is the setting side of it. PlayerPrefs dot set float, and the name of that was, we went with capital R, capital T raw time, comma, and we're getting that value from our lap time manager dot raw time, semicolon, and then at the bottom of line 54, we're going to also set raw time back to 0. So lap time manager dot raw time whenever we complete that lap. Save that. Now, same thing, we need to run the track one time to ensure that this saves over the player preferences. So I'm going to run that lap real quick, and then I'll see you in a second. Okay, so that should save your best time, and if you actually can beat your time. So, which I believe I did just then. So that should have worked. Oh wait, you know what? Did I set everything I needed to do? Yeah, I think we are good. So yeah, I think we're set on everything we needed for this video. Everything is looking solid to me. I have a sneaking suspicion that I missed something here, but the time, I think the time was correct here. I'm pretty sure I got it right, but I'm in my own head all the time, so I need to go back and look. Yeah, so this is the public float, lap time manager, public float. So all these have been assigned, and assigned. Yeah, I think we're good. All right, so guys, that is it for this video. We're going to look at we're going to add a more to our terrain next time, and we're also going to start counting our laps. I think we'll start with playing with some more terrain. I want to make it a little bit nicer than what we currently have. I will see you in the next video.